Hi.
Hello.
Well, I am Philosopher Bonnie, and I am here with Nick. And we were on a casual phone call earlier, and we were talking about the most current mass shooting that happened. And we were sort of talking about, um, kind of being philosophers, what we could do, given that we can't really do anything. What can we do? And I started thinking about the role of the correlation between inner peace and how unlikely it is that someone filled with inner peace would commit such an act of violence. And we started to unpack it a little bit, and then I said, you know what, let's do a call. Let's do a recording and really unpack it on video. So that's what we're here to do. But I'm gonna turn the microphone over to Nick and see if any of that stuff that we were talking about earlier comes through. We were talking about the correlation between inner peace and having kind of an awakening and non-dual reality and things like that. So,
Hi. Yeah. Um, let's see what there is there still. We were talking about how inner peace is connected to this sort of violence, or the correlation between not, someone with inner peace wouldn't be able to do something like that. So, yeah, I was, I was thinking about it, and for I could share my own experiences around, my relationship to guns and hunting and the whole transformation that I've been through, because I grew up in a culture where, like, we hunt and fish, and I started hunting probably when I was like 12 or something, I don't know. And just I grew up always around guns, for sure. uh, and I used to go hunting with my dad, um, and then I started doing acid at some point, and I remember that the very next time that I went hunting, after I had started using acid, I think I'd used it a few times throughout the year, and then it was the end of the year, and I went back out, and there was something about it. Like, I guess I felt like I had been sensitized to like non-dual reality. Basically, like, I felt like almost like I was experiencing myself as the bird also, as the whatever I was hunting. And it became not fun anymore. But I just felt like I was too aware of every perspective of what was happening, and it just like, I don't know, something changed within me, and I just um, kind of lost interest in it. But and then I kind of had like an aversion to it almost, but I also, like, I took off after that. I went a different direction in life to, like, pursue my curiosities about what I experienced with acid. And eventually I ended up getting into, like, meditation, and a lot more, like, going through deeper awakenings with the entheogens and meditation and stuff like that. And I remember also at one point, deep 5, 6 years into my whole process of self-awareness, I did a dark retreat. I did a 7-day dark retreat. And the first few days were just meditation, deep meditation, and then it felt like I was on a 5-day ayahuasca experience for the rest of the week after that. And I was going through these phases of different like experiences of myself, from like all kinds of visual content to like being in super lucid, like uh lucid dream states, that I was fully conscious of myself being in two realities simultaneously and could like bounce back and forth between them. It was and one of the experiences that I had, one of the visions, or like these conscious, super conscious, vivid dreams that I had, was of going out into the woods with a bow and arrow and stalking a deer and killing it and feeling like, and being able to like bring the deer back and go through the whole process and use every piece and like, tan the hide and use the meat, and just like I was having this like vision of myself doing that as like this deeply spiritual experience, like I was having like an awakening to the acceptance of the death and the um the death and life cycle that I had kind of like developed an aversion to, in the past. But and now, I mean, yeah, now it's a little different. I mean, now it's kind of like that, like it's been integrated. But and I would say I have a lot more inner peace now. But when I first started doing acid and had those experiences, I don't think that I did. And I definitely was like, yeah, so how to connect this with the other piece we were talking about?
Yeah, and you were also saying that prior to ever having the experience with LSD, that that you had found one of the incidences that had happened just the tiniest bit relatable, that you could kind of see where that person might have been coming from. And then after your experiences, that you couldn't anymore. And I thought that was interesting, that you'd gone from a place of, I don't want to tell your story, but of having, well, I don't want to tell your story. So, unless you want me to, but yeah.
Well, if you want. Um, yeah, so we were connecting this to, developing the inner peace over this transformation and related to the guns. And so, yeah, I was gonna say like, um, there was there was time in my life before the transformation I've gone through, where I would say I did not experience inner peace. And I felt bullied by life in many ways, and d- developed resentments towards humanity and towards myself, and basically had like a cynical attitude, sort to a degree. And or at least I felt that. And there was moments where I was like, well, yeah, I could see how someone builds themselves to the point where they just want to take it out on whoever they can because they can't hold it in anymore, and they don't know how to deal with their feelings.
Yeah.
And I've had a moment of like being able to see that perspective,
Yeah.
you know?
You said
And
spite was a word that was really prominent for you at the time too. I thought that was interesting. I thought I don't know what I thought, but spite is interesting. Yeah.
yeah, uh, spite, like, yeah, I guess I'll admit that like when I was deeply in that attitude, you know, I would rock out to Tool when they talk about California breaking off into the ocean and shit. You know, I was rooting for the earth to take itself back from humanity. You know, I was like, yeah, kind
Yeah.
of, yeah, they had that attitude going on. And for me, there was like a lot of like deeply buried hurt feelings that was kind of hovering around, these like unconscious wounds that I was holding on to, you know, all these attitudes and beliefs and thoughts about myself that were like spiteful or cynical or hurtful towards anyone, you know, it was all kind of just like hovering around these inner wounds that I was carrying around. And
Yeah.
um,
Do, do you think that um, before your experiences, before that kind of awakening, that you had a real sense of yourself being separate from everyone else, and that there were, quote, others that, you know, um, that you were separate and distinct from in a way that let you be able to empathize, where afterwards you more recognize the non-dual nature of things? Can you talk a little bit about that perspective? Because my belief is that anyone who can take a gun and go shoot a whole bunch of people is living in um, a frame of mind where there is no experience of non-duality. They don't experience being connected to everyone and everything. And I think that disconnection is probably like the key to really addressing. But there's people who just truly do not believe that we're connected. And I don't, I mean, I was there myself. You know, I really thought that there was others, and I was definitely bullied, and a lot of that's relatable to me. But I'm having a lot of trouble trying to like put myself into a mindset where I can really understand this. And I think maybe you're a little closer than I am. So
yeah, well, there was definitely like when I was maintaining these cynical attitudes, like there was a lot of thoughts that went very much like, you know, those people did this to me, or those people are fucking things up. Like it was constantly like this anger towards those other people. It was constant projection, you know, and constant othering.
uh-huh.
And I was angry at the other. I was spiteful and angry about the other. And the projection was just so strong and fueled by anger and, you know, I guess resentment of being bullied, I guess, or feeling bullied in life, or, you know, just having situations build up and having my mind build stories around them so I don't ever let it go, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but now I mean, you know, now there's a deep sense of the the fractal oneness nature of reality, and I can see all the perspectives.
Yeah.
And but you know, for me, it was like once I realized the oneness of everything and realize it within even my deepest pains and my deepest projections, and realizing the non-duality within those things, like, you know, you come to the point where another being as conscious as complex as you see as a reflection, like an equal reflection of yourself, and just, you know, from another perspective. And how could you harm yourself, you know, intentionally? And if you're not carrying any anger and resentment around, or pain and desire to project it onto others, then, you know, why would you?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And it's I wish I could, like, put a little window on that moment of shift from there's all of this in me and I want to project it to the, oh, I understand the mechanism of projection now. And I understand the fractal nature of everything, and put like a little window on that and unpack that whole window, you know? Because the shift is so transformational that on the other side of it, you're like, oh, that's what I believed. That's how I operated. Wow. How is that possible? Because the new way of thinking and the new way of being is so transformed. So it's like there I can only imagine that people who could do this kind of like mass violence um, would have to be deeply unconscious about anything outside of apparent reality. Um, the level of consciousness that would have to exist in order for it to happen. And I may be wrong. It may be that there are people. I'm exploring this because I just don't know. You know, um, and I don't know that there was even a question there. I'm just sort of musing about what you said. Um, do you have any insight into kind of what it took for that frame of mind for you to shift? Because one of the things I'm interested in is understanding this from enough angles that we could actually, we meaning whoever, could actually create interventions without giving everybody LSD, because that's not exactly practical. um, Given that it's illegal and has no known medical uses and things like that. And it's it's also delivered inner peace, and my, psychedelics made a profound impact on my inner peace. And I guess that's the question, is it's like, is inner peace, if it is true that people don't perpetuate violence on others when they have inner peace, because why would you? At what step before inner peace, right, do you get to, oh, why would I do that, right? So is it, I used to be really violent towards myself. I used to beat myself up all the time. I used to yell at myself. I used to punish myself. And when I stopped doing that, I also, that reflected out in the world, right? I stopped trying to punish other people also. There was a time when I thought that people should, if they cut me off, they should, whatever, feel my wrath, or, again, there's no question here. I'm just kind of exploring what's there. Do you have something to reflect on that? It wasn't actually a question on any of it.
Yeah. Um,
Maybe that inner judgment piece, maybe going where, when that shifted, how that impacted your maybe your violent feelings.
well, that looks like that shift. That, you know, it's hard to like say, talk about like specifically what happened, because it was, for me, it was such a long, difficult process.
It is a long, difficult process. Yeah, same.
And I don't remember like exactly when what shift happened necessarily.
Right.
It was kind of like shedding different layers of the onion, which moves in like a double helix sort of way, like a spiral.
Yeah.
So like it was like as I shedded the layers, the desire to project and the desire to like get angry at someone or towards other, just gradually, every time I did like a big piece of work, it would get significantly weaker
Mhm.
in my system.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would still notice like the thoughts, but the feelings would be majorly like reduced and more manageable after these big shifts.
Yeah.
And this whole process took many of these big shifts to
Yeah.
like really clean things out and come to peace with my within myself, you know.
Can you
Um,
imagine something other than psychedelics that would have created that kind of shift for you? Like, can you imagine maybe like some kind of program where, we found, most of these acts are being perpetrated by men. So if we found boys, teenagers that are full of spite and full of this kind of anger and full of this kind of projecting othering, and if we found them and had created some sort of program for them, can you imagine anything that would have made an impact?
well, I can think of other things that would probably work, but as are you talking about what would get someone like that interested in it?
Maybe, yeah. What would
Because
get them
because
interested? Maybe what would I'm just I'm feeling really powerless, and I'm a philosopher, so I'm doing the only thing I know how to do, which is unpack things and look at it from different angles and try and understand the mechanisms that run things. Because I'm feeling like,
I
what do
mean,
we do?
you know, things like meditation retreats or certain or like wilderness retreats that are maybe structured certain ways
Yeah,
to help people like unpack or, you know, but also people also need to work on, people need to be self-motivated to do this, and they often need to like, you know, go through program restructuring also more, and along with like whatever's going to move the stuff through the body,
yeah.
whatever work would do that. So I mean, someone could create a program that addresses this on all the levels.
And I'm sure there are programs that does address it on all the levels. They're not
Yeah,
really accessible or interesting to the, and maybe there'd be a lot more mass shootings if we didn't do this. So, I mean, who knows?
right,
But
right,
to me, it seems more like, how do we make people not want to use guns against? How do we make people not want to use guns? Um,
right.
More than what do we do about the guns? I feel like, there's enough guns in this country that are produced, that are legal, that we could all have one. I don't see
Yeah,
changing the laws making a huge impact on it. It just doesn't seem likely that it would. We have to make people not want to use them.
right, right. We have to, you have to work on a deeper level
Yeah,
than just taking their weapons away,
right. And
right?
the level of
And
consciousness that created the problem, I don't think is going to solve the problem. I think we have to do it from another level of consciousness, from the non-dual level.
well, yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
And I guess, and how do
and
we
you
convince
know,
people that they're connected when they feel so disconnected?
yeah, there's a lot there. You know, I sometimes I like wonder what it is about. I was talking about it earlier today, and just, you know, if I wonder if we made a stronger effort as a culture to develop emotional intelligence, that
Yeah,
would help a lot. Like when people are little, you know, like as a culture, we just ingrain that as more of a thing. Like even just acknowledging that it is a thing and like teaching that and becoming conscious of how you display the way you deal with your emotions to your
yeah.
yourself and your kids.
And that opens up a whole nother level of issues of, what parents have the bandwidth themselves to be constantly modeling good emotional intelligence when everybody's having such a difficult time. I mean, late stage capitalism is no joke.
I
It's
know.
difficult. It's a super difficult time to be raising children. I feel for Gen Alpha and Gen Z. They're being raised by people who are the most addicted, including, if you're including technology, it's the most addicted population, the most disconnected, the most sleep deprived that we've ever had, the people that are raising them. And they're being brought up in a world with, you know, they're just being brought up in a world that's not, you know, joy is such a foreign word to most people, you know. I, it makes sense to me, the mass shootings, the violence, the disconnection, it all makes perfect sense to me. um I'm just feeling really powerless right now. Yeah. Well,
Yeah, people are stressed out. People are,
yeah, stress burns all of our available, resources. It's driving with your foot on the brake and gas at the same time. It's trying to get
Mhm.
everywhere right now with none of the resources. I
And
mean, stress is, and all the things that we could do to alleviate stress would be exactly what we need to do to fix the country's problems in general. But it's not going to happen from the level of government. Our government is not set up or interested in that kind of work. Um, it would have to be something that we the people, would have to create that ourselves. Okay.
I, yeah, the way that I'm seeing it is that the transformation has to come from within, one person at a time, just doing, going through this process, whatever it is for each individual. And I
Yeah.
guess I guess that's the way I see it. That's like the ultimate. I mean, you could probably do things on a more surface level and make an effect on society as large, but it's not, it's, ultimately the most sustainable thing is to just allow people to go through whatever healing they need to go through. Um, you
Yeah.
know, each individual just, you know,
Yeah.
giving them opportunity to go through the process, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like we need a lot of retreat centers that are like specifically holding space to come into inner peace and to
Yeah,
do that healing. I mean, I
yeah,
think I guess one of the reasons I focus on inner peace is because inner peace is a real sign that you've done the work.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not necessarily an end goal, but it's, you don't get to inner peace without having faced all of the things that are causing all of the drama inside of you. You know,
right.
you face them, you unpack the stuff, you sort through what's there, and you end up integrating all of it and finding a way of understanding the universe that lets it be. You know, my way of understanding the universe is that I I am um, I am a piece of the whole that is experiencing itself through my perspective. That I am a perspective more than I am anything else. Um, and in that, that gives me freedom to be exactly who I am. And so that drama is not there. But until I had that, I was full of drama because I thought there was a right way to be, and I didn't know what it was, and other people did. Um, and I could see rebelling against that, because you're either going to submit to that or rebel against it. And, I could see rebelling against that. And I don't know. Um, the call isn't going the way that I'd hope we were going to have answers, but um, I'm just
And
feeling more and more like, I guess I've just been believing that we just have to do our own work, right? That if we do our own work, that our work will create a ripple effect, and eventually everybody will want to do their work. But I'm feeling pretty cynical today. I'm feeling maybe like that's not enough, and that's not going to be fast enough, and that we're going to continue hurting the earth, and we're going to continue hurting each other, unless something really big happens. And we've had all the big things that should happen. We've had all the natural disasters. We've had the climate, change. We've had all the big things. We had 9/11. We had all the stuff that should have brought us together. And it does, I guess, for a minute, but now we're so jaded. I think we're jaded by all of these big things that are supposed to be bringing us together, because, I mean, maybe there's something blocking us coming together. Maybe we need to be sitting around fires, campfires. We need to be growing our own food and feeding each other. And I mean, maybe we need that level of community, and there's only so much work we can do as individuals and just our friends groups. Maybe community is the thing that's really missing. I don't know. I mean, maybe we're leaving people behind by excluding them from community, and they're finding their own little pockets of community. You were talking before about something, and I was wondering what your life would have looked like had there been extremists in your area that you would have gotten positive feedback from being radical with. Like back in the days when, you would go hunting, if bragging about that got you positive reinforcement, if your life would have been different, if you'd been playing like these mass shooter games and you had like real life friends that you were playing with, and you like bonded over that kind of, I just wonder how different your life would be if you would have ended up doing the work that you did in the way you did it, or if you may have found a friends group that was more supportive of a radical way of looking at the world. I don't know. Do you have any insight
Right.
into that? Because maybe that's what's happening here, is maybe people are finding themselves, getting acceptance and reinforcement in ways that we can't imagine from our lives. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, the dogs.
Dogs are all excited about this topic.
They are excited about something right now, but um, yeah, people. If I would have, I don't have a lot of insight into that, but I could imagine things like going that way. There were people that I could have fallen into more of a friend group with that were more, I don't know, um, extreme, I guess, and
Yeah.
just what my life would have looked like. Yeah, I don't know that I have much to say about it.
Yeah.
What, yeah,
It's just an
I
interesting.
mean, it's an interesting thought. I mean, I think back to like, you know, where my life could have turned a different way, and there were definitely opportunities for that, but yeah,
Okay.
didn't go that way.
Do we have anything else we want to put in this video? We can always do other ones if we think of things that, you know, might really unpack the issue in different ways.
Um,
I guess I have something actually.
okay.
Back in the days, this is only tangentially related, but back in the days where I was full of hate for myself, and it was easy for me to other. If there was a bug in the house, if there was a moth, if there was a spider, if there was anything, I would want somebody to come and kill it. I wouldn't do it myself. That was always too hard for me. Very occasionally I killed things, but I always wanted somebody else to come and do it. And now, if there's a bug in the house that doesn't seem like I want to cohabitate with it, I talk to it just like I would talk to another person, and I ask if it wants to go outside. and I'm very gentle with it, and I try very hard not to hurt it. And I my experience of its life is that it's no different than mine. That it's having its own experience from its own perspective, and that's no less valuable than mine. Um, and that came from psychedelics for sure. My first mushroom trip, actually. There was a bug on my wall of some sort. It had lots of legs and was really strange looking, and I wasn't afraid of it. All the fear that I had of other vanished because I recognized that there was no other. Um, and that seems really important, I think, to have that kind of awakening. Um, and I wonder if we can get that through community. I wonder if we can get that through community kind of bonding experiences. I wonder if we don't need the medicine to get us there, um, given that the government seems to think medicine's a bad idea. But, mushrooms for peace.
Yeah, community. I mean, I don't know how to create the communities that would do that at this point in the United States. But I'm thinking about like smaller, more rural communities. Like, I don't know. I mean, there isn't, like, I guess I'm thinking about these villages, not like tribal villages, but like villages in the jungle where I go, and there's such a deep sense of community. And
Hmm.
they don't have these problems
No,
there, you know, and
they're looking
like,
for win-wins, right? Isn't everybody looking for a win-win in a place like that?
yeah, I mean, yeah, like people are so just in, yeah, it's like peaceful in a village,
Yeah,
where there's such a deep sense of community.
yeah,
And I mean, they're not super rural. They see outsiders in these places I'm thinking of, but
yeah. Well, what if a kid was starting to have problems and was starting to act out? How would they handle it? Do you have
in
any?
those cultures,
Yeah, I mean, like, what if there was the beginning of a problem? You know, what kind of have you seen enough? I've never been to any kind of places like this.
I haven't really like lived any spent like elongated periods of time there with them, so I don't have a good sense of that. But I know I don't know what it's like in the general village culture, but I know if you go into like an ayahuasca culture, at some point they start using ayahuasca, and maybe even just doing a ceremony, but they may or may not feed the kid any of the medicine, or maybe they'll just give them like a microdoses or whatever, depending on how old they are. But
Yeah,
I'm under the impression that once you get to a certain age and you act, out of alignment, they'll like do a ceremony with you, and,
yeah,
you know they'll
yeah,
kind of set you straight. They'll teach you what the aligned way to act is. And I don't know what they do if you don't get in alignment, but
yeah. I don't either. Because I think
they
what
give.
happens is what we do in our culture is we just tell people we cancel people, right?
Right,
When people are
right.
we just
Or
cancel them, but they're
yeah.
still here. They're still here. They still have their beliefs, and they're gonna still act on them. You know. And so I think a lot of people. I mean, I don't know how we could possibly study it, but I think that we would find a large percentage of the people who are acting in ways that are really difficult to be with have been canceled in some way or another. You know, that they feel canceled at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would think in a peaceful culture, I don't think we would cancel anyone because I think we would recognize that there's no other place for people to be. We're all still here on this planet together. Right? I mean, I guess inclusion really is is a thing.
Yeah.
But how do we include people that are having beliefs that are just, there are people who believe that me as a woman shouldn't have rights and shouldn't. You know, how do I include them?
Right.
They're not going to include me. You know, how does that work? And the more I think about this, the more despair I think I have. I just don't see how it could be different than it is.
Huh. Right.
I don't.
It's hard because we're in such a here in America, we're so deep in the patterns that created it all, you know. We're so deep in those patterns.
Yeah.
How do you change them?
Yeah. The United States of America. Divided, divided we fall. This is what falling feels like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's ending on a really sad note, but I don't know that I have much else to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know where else to go with it right now.
Thanks for exploring this with me.
I also want to say that I personally still enjoy shooting guns. I like target practice. I think it's fun to put little things out in the distance and try to shoot them off of stumps.
I Yeah, I my first experience with a rifle was when I was like 9. My dad and my grandfather and I were up at his lake house, um and he my dad said, "I'm gonna shoot the sense sign off of that Coke can off in the distance." And I just thought that was really cool. You know, and then my grandfather, he'd put up a bird feeder and the squirrels were in the bird feeder, and he'd given me his air rifle, which I guess was just his shooting rifle, but just without any ammunition. And he told me if any of the squirrels got in there to shoot the squirrel with it, that it wouldn't the squirrel would be okay, that it wasn't going to hurt him. And but it did hurt the squirrel. The squirrel was fucking pissed too. I didn't ever want to shoot at anything that was alive ever again, but target practice is fun. It would be fun to be able to do those clay pigeons that you throw the things up in the air and you shoot them.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that is fun.
that sounds fun. It sounds like, you know, that sounds like physics. It
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
it sounds like fun. And we should be able to do those things. And I think people should be able to have guns. I don't think that you should be able to walk into a Walmart to buy milk and see a cool new gun and bring it home with you that moment. I think maybe there should be some distance between the milk and the guns. I think that's reasonable and warranted. Um, but we live in a country where our constitution is built the way it's built and our laws are the way they are and the guns are already here, and it's not like we're going to make any laws that are going to take them away, because nobody's going to stand for that. That would really, if we were going to end, if the United States of America experiment was going to come to an end, it would come to an end by the federal government trying to take people's guns away, and the states that are really against that, you know, would fight. It would be, the next civil war. Um, and maybe we have to have that in order for some of us to live in peace. Um, but I don't like that world. I like the world where we get to stay a country. Um,
Hmm.
I like the world where we find a way to include everyone. And I mean everyone, even people with crazy beliefs, that we find a way to reconcile that we are actually all one. The spider and the fly are all one. You know, it there is there. I can imagine a world where we can reconcile that. I cannot imagine the bridge that gets us from here to there, though. My
Yeah,
imagination is not that good.
yeah.
Anyway,
It's just a start having the conversations.
yeah, it's worth having these conversations. I think it to start to unpack things, to see things from other people's perspectives, to maybe try and understand nuances that we haven't understood before. And I'm kind of new to this whole new non-duality thing. It came at me from a mushroom about a decade ago. um, and I'm still integrating, all of that, because I truly believed that there were other people, and now I'm not so sure how that works. So anyway, thanks for joining me on here.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to end the recording. Day reading glasses.